Welcome to Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Eric Sauver from the Law Office of Eric M. Sauver. I'm an employment law and business law attorney, and I'm here tonight with a special colleague and friend of mine, Ms. Janet Falk, public relations and marketing communications guru. Janet, welcome to the show.
Eric, I'm very happy to be here and talk about public relations and marketing communications for small business owners.
Well, I'm happy to have you. I thought I'd tell some of our first time listeners and some of our return listeners a little bit more about employment law today before we delve into our topic. And this is a show that I created. It's been running around 11, 12 weeks now. Every Tuesday night, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. here on Talk Radio NYC. You can watch this live on Facebook, or you can hear it on the audio at the Talk Radio NYC website. And the purpose of the show is to educate, to motivate, and to inspire small and mid-sized business owners, particularly during this rough time of the pandemic. And in this time, there are many employment law and labor law issues that come to light, as well as business law issues that you have to keep in mind. But it's also a time when everyday things like marketing and cybersecurity, issues around PR and CFO related matters, financial consulting, all of these professional services are actually very crucial right now during this time. So in that vein, I wanted to have Janet Falk on the show, and I'm so glad she's joining us. And I thought I would read a little bit of an introduction for you, Janet, if that's okay for our audience tonight.
Please.
Great. Okay. And our topic, by the way, in our show would be public relations during the pandemic, how to attract press and publicity for your business. As mentioned, my guest, Janet L. Falk, is a communications professional with more than 30 years of experience as a consultant. I actually did not mention this part, in both in-house and in public relations agencies. Janet advises attorneys at small law firms and with a solo practice on media relations and marketing communications. And she works with other professionals to help them to attract new clients, to remain on top of mind with prior clients, keep in touch with referral sources, generate a news story about their business, and Janet helps litigators to get the press coverage that puts pressure on opposing counsel. Janet leads workshops on these topics. In fact, I believe she led one just earlier today, and advises on media relations, website improvements, LinkedIn profiles, as well as articles in non-legal industry trade publications and client newsletters, among other areas. She has published articles on media relations and marketing in the New York Law Journal, the New Jersey Law Journal, and Marketing the Law Firm, and is a frequent guest on podcasts about public relations and legal marketing. I encourage any of our listeners tonight to speak with Janet for a free 30-minute consultation to assess your communications activity and your online presence. Janet says she guarantees 2 ideas. I heard she gives many more. So, Janet, again, thank you. Really a pleasure to have you on the show. I'm glad to be having this conversation with you about such an important topic.
It's always important to be putting yourself in front of your audience, whether it's online or in the news.
Great, great. And with this topic, I wanted to ask you perhaps a question. I know I spoke a bit about your background, but just tell us. I'm curious. How did you get into PR and marketing?
Oh, Eric, it is a very long and convoluted tale, but the short answer is I was a college professor of Spanish and found that I was not satisfied with my work. So I participated in an executive MBA style program. And from there, I started working on Wall Street. I was doing close textual analysis, not of Spanish literature, but of financial statements. Mm-hmm. And in speaking with the CFO or the investor relations contact, I realized that that was a role that I was very suited to. It was like teaching because I was taking complicated ideas and breaking them down and connecting different points of information to create a theme. So from there, I took a class in investor relations, and through networking, something I know you're a big champion of networking, mm-hmm. Through networking with one of my classmates, I got a job at the public relations agency where he worked. And so that was the start of my public relations career. So I went from academia to Wall Street, to public relations. And in the scope of my career, as you mentioned, I've worked at agencies, I've worked on staff at Wall Street firms, and I've worked for nonprofits. And I bring all that experience together from these very diverse sectors in my independent practice, advising business owners and attorneys.
Well, that's quite interesting tale. And it's interesting because I know that people, when they have different backgrounds and they have different fields they've been in, often they can bring, as you mentioned, Janet, those diverse experiences and the understanding of people and of the mechanics of different fields. You can bring that with you, as you said, into PR and marketing communications, which I have no doubt that you do. I wonder, in that vein, would you want to share with our viewers tonight, perhaps maybe one of your most memorable success stories you've had with a client?
Oh, I love to tell this story, Eric. So I had a client who had a niche business in the credit card industry. And he had some clients that were hotels, and some of them were very well-known hotels. Working with me, I developed a case study for him, and I pitched it to several hotel industry publications. And as part of the case study, I had quotes from 2 of these hotel clients, and their CFOs said what a great job he had done for them and how they had saved hundreds of thousands of dollars, literally hundreds of thousands of dollars. So 3 articles in hotel industry publications were published talking about his services and quoting these, CFOs from these very well-known hotels. Guess how many phone calls he got as a result of these 3 articles, Eric? Just guess.
How many phone calls he got? Is it more than a dozen, 15 phone calls?
It's way more than a dozen, 15. It's 800.
800. Okay.
800. 800. Now imagine, wow, Eric, if he had bought a list of CFOs of hotels and tried to contact these CFOs. Right. And they get emails and they get phone calls all the time, people cold calling them, wanting to sell them their services. And he would not have gotten any ground with them whatsoever. But here, 800 hotel CFOs got in touch with him. And these are not lukewarm leads. These are burning hot leads that want his service.
It's amazing when you think about, like you said, Janet, the time it would take him. First of all, the time it would take, I imagine, that he'd spend reaching out to and contacting 800 people, but also the chance of success is so much lower if he's just cold calling versus, the work you did to get these leads and have these people call him. It's really remarkable. I was going to guess 200, but my fear was that, I've had that question both before, and if for some reason it was less than that, you might say, well, it was, but that's actually really not surprising that you had such a successful result. I know that whenever I have a client and there's a successful outcome, there's a certain satisfaction, that comes with that, just knowing that you've helped them. And so, people out there listening tonight, keep that in mind. If you're contemplating some PR relations and marketing communications, it's definitely something to be strongly considered. And so,
well, I would put it to you this way, Eric. I mean, people are always concerned about the return on investment on public relations, right? And too many people think that marketing and communications and public relations are an expense, but they're not an expense. They are an investment. And if you, as a business owner, don't invest in your own business, then who do you think is going to do that for you? Right?
Right.
So I think it's very clear that by getting 800 phone calls, I don't know how many turned into clients, but by getting 800 phone calls, that more than paid for the investment he made by hiring me to raise his profile in front of this very targeted and very desirable audience.
Yes, I think that's such an important point to make too, that people often look at any kind of service and they say, okay, well, what's the expense? What's the cost? But whether it's PR and marketing communications, or let's say joining a certain networking group, that if you can get clients from that, or even just elevate yourself in terms of your connection to your colleagues who might then refer you or hire you for something or get you a speaking promotion that might lead to something else, you never really know I find how things will turn out. So it's a good point to make too. And sometimes the ROI is not sometimes it's not a very direct line exactly. Well, I put in this many hours and I got this return. And sometimes the ROI might come, return on investment might come maybe 6 months later, but it could be as soon as 3 days. But it's an interesting success story. It's something to really. I've heard you talk about several things. We've had lunch and we've had coffee, and you've told me different stories over the years. Um, I don't know if I heard that one, so it's kind of good that I'm glad I asked you that question. If I may ask you another question, since a lot of the show is showcasing you and your talents, and also letting our listeners know what they can expect or gain from you. I've been in networking groups with you, and I've heard your elevator pitch. I've heard it kind of starts with the why her and not me. Um, so what is that elevator pitch about? I think I know, but can you break it down for those that haven't heard it for our viewers tonight?
Sure. I read once that when you're giving a keynote speech,
Mhm.
the first 15 to 30 seconds are when the audience members are poised on the edge of their seat and they're expectant and they're waiting to hear from you.
Hmm.
So to begin your elevator speech with, my name is Janet Falk and I'm a public relations and marketing communications professional, doesn't really meet their expectant outlook.
Mhm.
So my approach is to say, when you see someone in your line of business quoted in the news, do you think, why are they talking to her and not me?
Mhm.
And that is something that comes so out of left field and asks a question
Hmm.
that it really grabs the audience's attention. Now, I don't know about you. You are an attorney, and I find that a lot of people who are small business owners are rather competitive,
Mhm.
attorneys especially. And so
Mhm.
the notion, why her and not me,
Mhm.
right, feeds into their sense of self-importance and and their pride of running a successful business. And men tend to be envious of a woman who gets ahead of them, and women are certainly competitive with other women.
Mhm.
So that's why I have structured my elevator pitch in that way, to first take advantage of that expectancy of the first 15 to 30 seconds.
Mhm.
And second, to grab attention with a question that demands an answer. And I do give that answer.
Mhm.
And third, to tap into something of the psyche of the members of the audience, which is that as proud business owners or attorneys, they have a competitive streak. And so
Mhm.
they relate to what I'm saying. And if your listeners are interested, I have written a newsletter on the subject called What's Up with Your Elevator Pitch? And it's on my website, janetlfalk.com. So listeners can go to my website and look in my newsletter collection and find What's Up with Your Elevator Pitch. And I will say that one of my subscribers told me that as a result of reading that newsletter, he
Mhm.
totally transformed his elevator pitch, and now it turns heads.
It's first of all, I want to compliment you on that title. What's up with your elevator pitch? I like that play on words, and um, certainly the idea of I've heard this as well, and I hope our listeners tonight can take this in. Starting a presentation with a question is always a good way to do so, but and even more so, a question that people are thinking about in their minds. I know it's what certain great politicians have done over the course of the decades and centuries, and it's certainly something to keep in mind. So we appreciate hearing the background of that. All makes a lot of sense. We are due for our first commercial break, but we will be back with more from Janet Falk, more excellent guidance around PR, public relations, that is, and media marketing communication. So stick around, folks. I'm Eric Sauver from the Law Office Eric M. Sauver, employment law attorney, host of Employment Law Today, and we will be right back.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Do you love or are you intrigued about New York City and its neighborhoods? I'm Jeff Goodman, host of Rediscovering New York, a weekly show that showcases New York's history and its extraordinary neighborhoods. Every Tuesday live at 7 p.m., we focus on a particular neighborhood and explore its history, its vibe, its feel, and its energy. Tune in live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on TalkRadio.NYC.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant. And on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on TalkRadio.NYC.
Hi, I'm Graham Dobbin. Join me every Thursday evening for the Mind Behind Leadership here on TalkRadio.NYC. We speak to people from business, sport, military, and politics, all around what makes a great leader. The personal experiences of what's worked and, maybe more importantly, what hasn't worked. So that's 7 o'clock every Thursday evening, the Mind Behind Leadership here on TalkRadio.NYC. Listen to real stories of real leaders.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to our show, Employment Law Today, here on TalkRadio.NYC. I'm your host, Eric Sauber, here with my guest tonight, Janet Falk. And Janet, just to, if I may, summarize perhaps for some of our viewers tonight, and for those joining us late, we've been talking with Janet about the importance of public relations and marketing communications. Janet is an expert in this field with a lot of experience, a wealth of experience, and she shared with us some of her most memorable moments with a successful story on a client, really emphasizing the fact that good PR and having a good PR and marketing person like Janet in your corner, it's not just it's not an expense, it's an investment. And I think it's a very important point to make. And I think that as small businesses out there listening tonight and those joining us now can appreciate, you really have to spend money to make money. And really, you can look at a lot of things as investments. And I think sometimes that investment component is more clear and obvious, and sometimes it's not. So I think it's important to note the investment power of a good PR and marketing promotion campaign and a person like Janet to assist you. Talking with Janet about her, some of her work. And in doing so, I wanted to ask you, we're talking about media coverage. So Janet, what are some reasons, perhaps besides maybe gaining new clients, what are some other reasons that a business owner or an attorney would want to attract media coverage?
Okay, I can think of many reasons, Eric, and if you'll share with the viewing audience the first slide, then I can go over them one by one, and then people will be able to follow along.
I will do that right now. So
Okay.
share screen, bear with me 1 second here.
Yeah, I mean, you may remember I said in my elevator pitch, when you see someone else quoted in the news, you might be thinking, why her and not me? And the answer is reporters call the people they know. They don't call someone that they've never heard of. So if you want to be that person, then you have to introduce yourself to a reporter. And it's the same with clients. Clients and prospective clients call the person that they read about in the news. So if you want to be that person, find a way to get yourself in the news. So I think that's definitely a prime reason why people want to be in the news. But here are some of the others on the slide. The second reason is to be top of mind with referral sources. So let's imagine that you're a merchant and you sell gym clothes, right? So you would want to be in touch with people that are trainers and you would want to be in touch with the local gyms, and you would want to be in touch with the local running clubs. So you want to be in touch with people who are likely to refer you prospective customers. And when they see you in the news, then they will be thinking of you, and then they will have you top of mind and send you that referral. You might want to build your reputation and your brand. So say you have a hair salon and you specialize in a certain kind of braiding or a certain kind of treatment of hair, then you want to be known as the salon that can handle that kind of hair and that kind of client. You also want to keep in touch with your current clients and your lapsed clients, because a client who uses you for one service may not know of the many other services and areas where you could be helping them. And the same with your lapsed clients. So attracting clients, being top of mind with referral sources, being known as the source who can help with a particular kind of situation or a particular kind of hair, as I mentioned, and keeping in touch with your current and lapsed clients. But maybe you want to keep in touch with people that you've met from your many different circles, people that you know from your networking circles. I mean, Eric, you have been a source for me when I write my column for the New York Law Journal. And I know that you have said that people have contacted you because they saw your article and they saw your name mentioned in the Law Journal. Even other attorneys have gotten in touch with you because they saw you mentioned in the New York Law Journal.
Absolutely true.
Now, another reason is to recruit employees, because doesn't everyone want to work for that great company that's always getting mentioned in the news? And, you know, it helps them to be part of that prestige factor. And one more thing is to advocate for an issue. So if you're a neighborhood merchant, it may be that there's something going on in the neighborhood that you want to align yourself with, right? Like maybe there's an outdoor street fair happening, as we saw, you know, months ago, or maybe there's an issue regarding the cleanliness of the streets, or maybe there's a speed limit that has to be lowered. So maybe you want to be in the news so that you can align yourself with others who are like-minded, and then you can be advocating for this issue in the news. So I think you can see, Eric, that being in touch with prospective clients is certainly a very motivating factor, but keeping in touch with other people that you know from different circles, recruiting employees, being an advocate in the community, these are also very valuable reasons why a business owner might want to be in the news. Don't you agree?
I do actually, yes. I mean, a lot comes to mind here too. A lot of things to cover, but I agree 100%. Well, first, I can vouch for and confirm what Janet said is true, that not only have I gotten some calls in terms of colleagues and referral sources from being quoted in the New York Law Journal, which is now also in my email signature block that it mentions I'm a contributing member, you know, who contributes to Janet Falk's publication, as well as mentions my hosting of my own talk radio show here on TalkRadio.NYC. I think that what I find, you know, Janet, is that a lot of these bullet points, it seems that being in the news can accomplish, right, more than one of these. Like many people, for example, if you're top of mind with your, if you rather build reputation, let's say, and brand, and you start to get known as an authority because you're repeatedly quoted in U.S. News and World Report or legal journals as an attorney, you build that reputation, and now you're top of mind with your referral sources. You know, now they're saying, well, you know, I see Janet Falk, she's in the news a lot, she's doing CLE, she's being asked to speak, she's being asked for her quotes, or I see, let's say, Eric Sauver, he's being quoted in this trade magazine, he's being quoted here, he's, you know, running a talk radio show, so listeners keep that in mind as well. That it does build a reputation and also keeps the top of mind. And I must say that I think that it's important for people to remember that, because in my experiences, and Janet, perhaps you can vouch for this too, that when people talk about PR, marketing, or any type of activity networking, they say, well, have you gotten clients from it? Does it attract clients? And it seems to me that if you are in touch with your referral sources and they're your top of mind, if you have a reputation and brand, and even just maintaining contact with lapsed clients or people, that you will attract new clients, whether it's indirectly through that call from a colleague who's like, hey, I haven't talked to you in a year and a half, Eric or Janet, but you were quoting this article and Janet helped you get that quote from that reporter. And I saw you put it on LinkedIn and then I saw you again. So I have a client for you. Whereas if without that being in the news, that person might just be thinking to themselves, oh, who's that attorney that I met networking a year ago? Oh, well, I don't remember. I'll just call somebody else. So, just kind of I do agree with your points. And I think that's an interesting point that you make,
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, it all is integrated into what it is that you're doing to promote yourself. I like the fact that you mentioned that you have a mention of it in your email signature. People are sending and receiving probably 100 emails every day. And that is real estate that is really underutilized because you can put so much information in that email signature. You can link to an article where you were quoted, which is something that you do, Eric, and you're promoting your talk radio show, which is something that other people might take a note of. When I appear on a podcast, I put that in my email signature as well. And another thing that I do is I teach groups of people who organize themselves how they can introduce themselves to a reporter. And you can bet that that's a link in my email signature too. It goes to a page on my website so that people might be able to, get more information about inviting me to speak to their group about how they could introduce themselves to reporters. So I would encourage those on the call to think about that underutilized real estate. It belongs to you, and you should be doing more with it, not just linking to your LinkedIn profile and your Twitter account and your Facebook page. That's fine, but think about other creative ways that you could be promoting where you've had success, appearing on a podcast or writing an article or being quoted in an article, even a link to subscribe to your newsletter.
Jenna, I've heard you mention that before. I've actually taken your feedback and I've noticed what you do, and that's also why I changed my signature. I think it's important for businesses to realize that because people often assume their email block, very often the block has the basics, your name of your business or a law firm or company, phone number, how to get in touch with somebody, contact information. But if you're, let's say, trying to attract a new client, or let's say you're an attorney sending out an email to opposing counsel with a demand letter, they're going to take note of what's in your signature. So if you're sharing your accomplishments, that you're, say, an author of an article or book or a host of a radio show or all the above, I think it definitely carries some weight. So I thank you for sharing all this with us. The why of why one would want to be in the news. It actually leads me to another question I have for you, if you're ready for maybe a different question here. And I know we have another slide to show, but I'm wondering, what would you say is your most effective tool to reach out to reporters?
What I like to use is a media profile. And that's something that can highlight aspects of your experience. And not only that, but it can help you to identify topics that would be interesting to a reporter to interview you about. Reporters know what has already happened. They want to know what's going to happen before it happens. So if you can highlight those topics and those trends and those issues that will help the reader to save time, save money, and make more money, then you will be providing a true service to the reporter, because they're not aware of everything from the perspective of the business owner and the person who could provide that very vital insight.
I'd love to explore this a little bit more deeply with you, Janet. The good news is we have time to do that. That's the good news. I wouldn't say bad news, but the other news is that we do have to take a commercial break. So we'll just perhaps get more into that in depth, delve into that after the break. And so folks, stick around. You're listening to and or watching Employment Law Today here on TalkRadio.NYC. I'm your host, Eric Sauver. I'm here Tuesdays, 5 p.m., 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My guest tonight, very talented, experienced Janet Falk of Falk Communications and Research, Public Relations and Marketing Communications. So stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Are you interested in having a better relationship with yourself, others, and God? Greetings. I'm your host, Dr. George Andow, for the show, A Journey Through into Awareness. On my show, we journey into the awareness that the mind of God is the true seat of our personal consciousness. We join together each Monday at 7 p.m., so tune in on Talk Radio NYC.
You know you have it. The potential for a more rewarding life, a life that matters. But how do you get there? The answer is in a best-selling book by the coach of the successful and wealthy, Ken D. Foster, The Courage to Change Everything, Daily Strategies and Wisdom to Awaken Your Hidden Genius and Transform Your Life. With this powerful yet amazingly simple daily guide, your future is in your hands. You will be empowered to unlock your potential, bring out your true gifts, increase your wealth, and take your life and business to a new level. Get your life-transforming copy of Ken D. Foster's The Courage to Change Everything by going to couragetochange.us. That's couragetochange.us. Quite frankly, there's no other book like this. Imagine what your life could be like if you had at your fingertips the success principles to create the life you've always wanted. Are you ready to live your dream? Go to couragetochange.us.
Are you a curious person, always asking questions? Do you desire to be in the know? Then join me, Antonia, host of So Now You Know, Thursdays at 5 p.m. at TalkRadio.NYC. Listen in as I attempt to satisfy that curiosity. I will be talking with amazing, everyday people. Join the fun. So Now You Know on Thursdays at 5 p.m. at TalkRadio.NYC.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Eric Sauber. My guest tonight is Janet Falk. We're talking about public relations during the pandemic, how to attract press and publicity for your business. And, you know, I have to say, I've known Janet now for a few years, I guess, maybe 3.5, 4 years thereabouts, maybe 4, a little more. And I know in that time, you've given me some good feedback, you know, about the do's and don'ts about reaching out to reporters. You know, I also want to thank you. You've introduced me to reporters over the years, whether through Help a Reporter Out, through Hero, or through connections. And you've often given me a really good tip, whether it's to start with a certain line or keep it succinct, or, you know, what not to say, what to say. So I wanted our listeners tonight to get some wisdom and some of that experience as well, because it's worked. You know, I've had reporters reach out to me. I don't know if they would have if I didn't take your advice. So A, thank you first and foremost for that. And B, I know I've said it before, I'll say it again. And B, why don't I share a screen with our listeners tonight? And let's see, this is okay, that is right there. I'm gonna lead to, let's see, the next slide. Okay, I believe this is the correct slide, right, Janet? This
is the one.
Yes.
So I would encourage people to think like a reporter if they want to be in the news. A reporter, when they're writing their story, thinks about the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, why. So now we're going to break this down and think about how we as individuals who want to be in the news should be thinking about the person who's on the other side of the table, meaning the audience, and through the reporter, we're going to reach that audience. So the first question, of course, is who? Who is it that you want to read this news story? Is it everyone? No, it's not everyone, because you can't possibly deal with everyone. Is it teenagers who want to get a job babysitting, so they need to, improve their skills of taking care of children? Or is it seniors who are looking to better manage on a fixed income? Or is it families who want to be able to have a fun meal at a restaurant, right? When we can go back to indoor dining. So who is it that you want to read the news story? Now, the second thing is what? What idea will they read about? And this has to be something that's new and different that they haven't thought about before. And so you're going to be providing them with a resource or an insight that they can take action and follow up. Now, when is this story going to unfold? Is it time sensitive? In other words, if you help people with their tax returns, then you know that the prime time is December, because they want to be able to take advantage of things before the end of the calendar year. And then that period from January till mid-April, which is when they're going to really need your advice to help them complete their IRS forms. So there are other occasions, though, that things aren't time sensitive. They're not connected to any major holiday, and they're not connected to any, graduation or wedding or something like that. So who do you want to read the news story? What is it that they will read about that would be something new and different, or have a particular insight that will have impact for them as an individual or as a business owner? And then, is it particularly time sensitive? Now that you've figured that out, you have to figure out where are they going to be looking for news? So here in New York City, we are blessed with 3 major daily newspapers, plus the Wall Street Journal, which of course is a national. And then there are a lot of small neighborhood papers, in Brooklyn and Queens, Bronx, Staten Island, and different neighborhoods in Manhattan. So you have to consider that you may not be able to grab the attention of the New York Post, the New York Times, or the Daily News, but you may be able to grab the attention of a reporter at one of these local newspapers. And finally, why will anyone care? Now, as I said before, most people are concerned with saving time, saving money, and making more money. So when you come up with your idea of who is going to read it, you have to think, why will they care? What is the problem that you are going to solve? Or what is the enjoyment of life that you are going to help them to experience?
Right.
So you put it all together and you can see that thinking like a reporter and thinking who, what, when, where, and why in terms of your audience. And remember, your audience is going to vary. It could be potential customers, or it could be referral sources, or it could be prospective employees, or it could be others who are like-minded and who are advocating for a cause like yourself. So your audience is going to vary, and that is going to affect the idea and where they're going to look for news and why they will care. So again, to remember the think like a reporter with the 5 W's when you are coming up with your story idea of how to introduce yourself to a reporter and make them see that you have a great idea that they need to write about.
It's interesting. What I see here from the slide and from what you've said, Janet, I see that this can be great for not only getting the reporter to take interest in whatever you write to them, but also in helping you, the business owner or the law firm, professional, whatnot, to figure out strategically which reporters to approach, right? Because as you mentioned, if let's say I'm a financial advisor and I'm dealing with the elderly and I want to make sure that they read some story, I'm not going to approach the writer, let's say, for a popular teen magazine, right? Unless they're, right, teens might, because it doesn't fit. As a sort of a hyperbole example, but I think the point's made. It's interesting though. So I see here in this who, what, where, when, where, and why, that this can be great for attracting the reporter and also for deciding which reporters you wish to reach out to. I'm wondering, can you tell us, say, how do people misuse or correctly use some of these who, what, when, and why when they're reaching out to like reporters, an email, let's say, or a phone call?
One thing that happens is that, as you said, Eric, they have misidentified the interest of the reporter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry to report, but not every news story belongs on the front page of the New York Times.
Mm.
I know that's where a lot of people would like to see themselves. And I have done that. I have put people on the front page of the New York Times.
Wow.
And not every story belongs on the Today Show. I mean, and I have gotten people on the Today Show.
Wow.
So you have to adjust your expectations
Mm-hmm.
and understand that the world is a little bit different than the way you see it. I often say that clients live within the four walls of their own house.
Mm.
And they see certain things and they use a particular language. My role as a public relations professional is to bring in some fresh air, open up the doors and windows, and communicate that the world outside sees the situation a little bit differently than you do yourselves. So let me mention that just yesterday, I was working on a press release for an organization that had a major fundraising event, and it's a foundation that's dealing with a certain disease.
Okay.
And the headline says, name of organization, hosts event, and raises $2.2 million for research.
Mm-hmm.
And they forgot to say research on the name of the disease.
Oh, wow.
Because since they think about themselves in the four walls of their own house,
Right.
they think that everybody knows the name of the organization and what the disease is about and so on. But for the person who is not acquainted with the organization, it's important to say raises millions for research on the name of the disease. So I think that's the problem that many people face, is they don't realize that they are talking among themselves in their own language, in the four walls of their own house. And they have to consider that other people are less familiar with what it is that they want to address.
Right. It's like that echo chamber. And also the sort of subjective and the assumption I think many people have that, well, I know what I'm talking about, and therefore everyone else knows it as just as well. It's interesting. I think it's really, those are all important points, and I can see how you, as a public relations and marketing and promotion person, would really help your clients to step outside those four walls and to take a fresh look. So that's great. That I like that metaphor with the windows being open, the fresh air coming in. You know, hey, look, think about who you want to read the story and what ideas they'll read about and where they look for their news. I mean, that's something really important. It reminds me about that. That's, I think, a concept that our listeners tonight, you know, they can take with them, whether it's in PR, if say you're working with Janet Falk, for example, or let's say you're in business and you're out networking. I've been to networking groups where someone, say, is a very expert in the technology, in the tech field, and they share who they are and what they do, and they're talking in a very highly technology type, lingo that I can see they're losing their room. They're certainly losing me if they're mentioning, high tech terms, but I can tell that it's second language to them, it's second nature to them. And, I try to keep that in mind as well. I mean, I help small businesses, I help mid-sized companies as well with employment law and business law issues. So, if I'm, for example, going to tell people what I do, I can talk about Title VII, ADA, and an alphabet soup of laws and statutes and regulations. But instead, I just say, if you're a company out there and you're involved in hiring, firing, managing, or furloughing employees, or anything involving paid leave, you're going to need to know how to follow the law, how to have contracts that solidify that, and defend yourself if you get in trouble on those grounds. And that's where I come in. So it's interesting. I've taken that from what you're saying about PR, and I think it can apply in other areas as well. But certainly in the public relations field, and certainly when talking to reporters. So I want to thank you for sharing about that. I'm wondering in terms of how, well, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm curious how you might say it, Jenna. How do you see yourself differing from some of your peers in your philosophy, your approach to public relations?
I would point to two things. One is I mentioned that my experience includes working on Wall Street, so I'm very bottom line oriented about results. You know, save time, save money, make more money. And the second thing is, if you'll see my logo, it's an F embedded in the shape of an octagon, because I'm not a round peg and I'm not a square peg. I'm an octagonal peg. And so I bring my diversified experience of Wall Street, legal, nonprofit, and so on to the fore. And that gives me a much broader perspective of possible solutions and possible strategies in dealing with my clients. Many of my peers are focused strictly on consumer or lifestyle or healthcare. And so I think they are more narrowly focused. They're deeper into those fields, for which I applaud them, but that's not what drives me. I appreciate the fact that I have a diversified approach coming from my very eclectic background, and my clients appreciate that as well.
Got it. Jenna, we have to take a commercial break, so I wanted to, give you a chance to say what you had to say there. Thank you. We'll be right back, folks. Stick around. I'm Eric Sauver, host of Employment Law Today, here with my special guest tonight, a friend and colleague, Janet Falk, public relations and PR marketing person. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Are you a small business trying to navigate the COVID-19 related employment laws? Hello, I'm Eric Sauver, employment law, business law attorney, and host of the new radio show, Employment Law Today. On my show, we'll have guests to discuss the common employment law challenges business owners are facing during these trying times. Tune in on Tuesday evenings from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on TalkRadio.NYC.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business, or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on TalkRadio.NYC.
Do you run or are ready to open your own business? Hi, I'm Jeremiah Fox. I've been operating and opening small business for the last 25 years, and I'm the host of the new show, The Entrepreneurial Web. Tune in every Friday at noon Eastern Time for insights and stories on the nuances of running small business right here on Fridays at noon, TalkRadio.NYC.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back, folks, to Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Eric Sauver, from the law office of Eric M. Sauver. I practice employment law and business law for small to mid-sized businesses out there. I'm here tonight, as you all know, if you're listening, with Janet Falk, public relations and marketing communications, I'll say guru. I really believe that. So, Janet, thank you for being here tonight. We have a really great to have you, really interesting conversation and some helpful tips that I hope our listeners and our viewers are really taking in. So thank you for being on the show tonight.
My pleasure, Eric. I'm having fun.
Yeah, we still have some time to go, so but the time does fly. I wanted to ask you, it's a question I asked a lot of my guests on the show. By the way, I'll take a moment to say that in the last 12 weeks, I've been so gratified by the level of just expertise and high quality feedback that guests on the show have given. So I really, and you're right in there with them, Janet, in terms of just the helpful information. It's really, really refreshing to hear. I always ask my guests about the pandemic, right? How it's changed the situation or what they do for better or worse. So I'll pose that question to you, which is mainly, how has the pandemic changed the way in which reporters and the media interact with professionals and business owners?
I think you have to look at the situation of where reporters are today.
Mm-hmm.
They're not in the newsroom. They're working from home, just like you.
Mm-hmm.
They're dealing with their spouse, or they're dealing with their children who are also learning from home and working from home.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be that I would pitch reporters stories between 9 and 11, and I certainly wouldn't call them after 3. But now they might be supervising their household between the hours of 9 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
So they might be writing their stories and doing their interviews late at night. So you have to consider that the news is a 24/7 business, but now that reporters are working independently of the newsroom, that it's completely unpredictable when it is that you're going to be able to get in touch with them. So some of them are adhering to a more or less 9 to 6 schedule, but others are working at whatever spare time they can manage, because they're dealing with their spouse or their elderly parents, or they're dealing with their children working from home, just like all the rest of us. So I think that that's something that people ought to consider, that reporters are not keeping to the usual schedule. And so if you're concerned about reaching someone, well, it's like anything else. You make a call and they're either going to answer or they're not. So, don't expect that, reporters are going to be keeping to a 9 to 6 schedule the way that they did in the past.
It's interesting, though. I mean, I definitely hear what you're saying. It's an interesting point. And that makes me wonder, though, should people still adhere to certain norms around boundaries and not call a reporter at 9 p.m. in case they're working from home and their cell phone's right there? And in other words, should someone still reach out during business hours, but then perhaps let the reporter know in an email that the person reaching out, would be available to speak in the evening, or should we just take a chance and try someone at a later time?
Well, first of all, it's very unlikely that you would have a reporter's cell phone number.
Okay. Good point. Sure. Okay.
So that's first of all. If you had a reporter's office number, many of them do say, if you have breaking news, contact me on my cell phone. So that's where you're able to get their cell phone number. They keep that information private, as you might expect.
Good point.
So what I would encourage people to do is, to use email. And, then if you're saying, I'm available for comment between the hours of, 5 p.m. and 9 p.m., then, the reporter will know to reach back to you at that time whenever it's convenient for the reporter. So I don't encourage people to call reporters. They duck those calls anyway. They screen their calls like many other people do. I do encourage them to email. And if your schedule might be a little off or a little crowded, then, make note of when you are available for comment so that they can get back to you at a convenient time for the both of you.
Makes sense.
Of course, reporters at first, through March, April, May, were very focused on COVID-related themes, and they still are. But as we see that this pandemic is going to persist for another 6 to 9 months, they are hungry for other kinds of stories. So I would encourage people to look beyond the pandemic theme and think about other ways that they can call attention to themselves and highlight the service that they bring or the product that they bring to their specific clientele or to their marketplace, and focus on that.
All interesting points to keep in mind about the timing of when you might want to make yourself available now during the pandemic, but also about knowing that life is going on, and the longer this lasts, the less of sort of a novel thing it is, so that we can be a little more broad in what we're presenting. So that's Really, really good to know. We've got a couple minutes left, and usually I like to leave that as sort of the wrap up slash miscellaneous part where, I turn the floor over to you. Anything you want to share with our listeners tonight? Any way to reach you? I see you've got right there in your background how to reach you, but anything else you want to share with our audience of small and mid-sized business owners tonight?
Well, if you could put up the third slide, Eric, then,
Sure.
I think it would be helpful to people.
Oh, yes.
Because I want to remind them that all of this communications activity is of a piece, that getting yourself in front of a reporter and suggesting a story idea is the first part. But then when you do get the story, next slide, when you do get the story, you have to think about how you're going to share it and how you're going to make it available. And I did mention one thing, which is including a link to it in your email signature. But there are other things that you can do with that news story. So one of them would be to turn it into a speaking engagement.
Right.
Another thing would be to write a LinkedIn post about it. Another thing would be to write a newsletter about it. So think about the fact that you are featured in this news story and how you can monetize it and how you can expand on it so that it will become more visible to more people. So for those who are watching the screen, you can see that I have listed my phone number, my email address. I am active on LinkedIn, and Eric and I often comment on each other's posts. I have a Twitter account where I post occasionally. I do have a monthly newsletter where, as I mentioned earlier, in What's Up with Your Elevator Pitch, I like to give tips on what I think other people should do to improve their communications. And I also have an ebook about how you can be the one reporters call so that
Janet,
you can professionally introduce yourself to reporters.
Oh, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I know with the time flies when you're having fun. We have to wrap up for the evening for the next show.
Okay.
But thank you so much. It's a pleasure having you here. Tonight, folks, I'm here with Janet Falk, public relations and marketing communications professional and guru. You can reach Janet at the email or her website, www.janetlfalk.com. Tune in next week, 5 p.m., 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Eric Sarver, on TalkRadio.NYC. Folks, have a great, wonderful evening. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you, Eric.